Welkom terug hier by die groot ontbyt. Ek het weer gehoor ek mompel bietjie vandag. So met ek opgewonde is, dan praat ek baie vinnig.
Miauw.
Miauw. Wat is die reël met eet? Mens moet stadig eet. 20 keer kou voor jy sluk. Wat ou mense glo. Maar as jy wil maar word, dan kan jy jouself bietjie maar eet. Kyk hierdie. Kyk, sekere mense praat van lasagne, maar dit is lasagne.
Ek het nog nooit gehoor dat iemand so iets...
Lasagne.
Ja, het jy dit al baie gehoor, Jorne?
Ja. Maar sê net vir my dit lyk nie lekker nie.
Dit lyk heerlik.
En dan dink jy as jy 'n lasagne eet, kan jy nie maar word nie. Maar hierdie is nou as jy bietjie in die gym werk, 520 kalorieë of jy deel hom sommer met iemand, jy kan sommer voel hoe swaar is hierdie, voel hoe swaar.
So moet jy dit eet voordat jy gymnaseer.
Jy kan hom na die tyd of voor die tyd, maar dit is regte voedingswaarde, dit is nog steeds ongelooflik gesond. Hy het net 'n sekere hoeveelheid vet en carbs en dan ook kalorieë in. Maar dis een van my gunsteling mans measured meals.
Jy het dit nou vandag vir my gebring. Toe ons kan maar later beklei.
Ons deel hom.
Ek wag vir Tanya se aartappelgereg.
Nee.
Later in die program.
Nee, dis presies wat die keuse wat jy moet maak nou. Is oor naweke is aartappelgereg, maar dit is naweek.
Goed.
Okay, ons gaan hom meng.
Okay.
Nee, my's lekker daai.
Ek bær hom vir jou hier agter my.
Great, dankie Elsa. Ek voel nou so skuldig. Lyk soos die synigste mens ooit. So dis Munch Measured Meals. Jy gaan na measuredmeals.co.za. Hulle lewer landwyd af en eet jouself maar voorafgemaakte maaltye vars uit hulle oond en kombuis na jou voordeur toe. En dan nou so van sport gepraat. Dokter Danielle Brittain, sy is die SA roeispan spandokter. Hierdie is 'n as ek nou moet beskryf wat ek nou gister gaan kyk het en gelees het.
Ja.
Voel vir my dit soos 'n droomma om te hê. 4 seuns, 2 van haar seuns is bekende roeiers wat al Olimpiese medaljes gewen het. So Danielle, a big welcome.
Thank you, and lovely to be here.
And you in Tokyo now, Tokyo.
I've just come back from Tokyo.
Okay.
We were there, I was there for a long time, 6 weeks, and it's fantastic to be home, but also was an incredible experience. Unfortunately, our rowing didn't go as well as we wanted it to go, but besides that, which was very hard for us, the games were incredible and really witnessed some fantastic events and sportsmen and women really competing under very difficult circumstances with no people watching. And but actually Japan just organized the most beautiful games, really. So that was very special to be there and be part of it. So it's wonderful to be home now and look forward to what the plans are for the future. But really the games were a great success under the circumstances of COVID and all the restrictions that were placed on Tokyo. They managed incredibly well.
So we're going to talk... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think it was an amazing Olympics, like you said. But we're going to talk about your book, Warriors. But I first want to find out a bit more about you, where you grew up, and just a little bit of your journey becoming a medical doctor, and then we'll get to the sons and being the team doctor. But just a little bit of background. Where did you fall in love with medicine?
So I actually grew up in Johannesburg. I was in Johannesburg all my life, and went to school, finished matric. I actually did 2 years of nursing before I decided to do medicine. And then I knew when I was actually working in the hospital that I wanted to do medicine. And I applied, I got accepted into Wits and UCT, and eventually I chose Wits because that was close to home and I still felt I needed my family near me. And I started at Wits and finished there. And yeah, that was a big journey. That was a difficult journey. Doing medicine is one of those degrees where you work long hours. You're always studying. You don't have that much social life. And that's where I met my husband when I was in second year. We were dissecting over a cadaver, and I had a small group of people which you always dissect with. And he used to come down and talk rowing to one of the guys that I was working with. And that's when I first sort of started eyeing him. But we only got together quite a lot later than that. And then finished my medical degree, then went to Baragwanath Hospital, which is very close to my heart. I loved working there, worked there for many years, in between having my children. And then branched into palliative care and did a lot of work on that side of things. And then finally came into sports medicine. So, yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey, but, yeah, very special. And I think I would do it all again if I had my time over.
That's a good place to be. And just being a mother, you're such a professional job, and then 4 boys. That must have been so busy. So I want to gossip a bit about them as kids, these 4 boys. And then and also, you know, I mean, everyone's playing rugby or they do tennis and do athletics. And rowing is a kind of a unique sport. I've tried once with that K1 canoe. What's that thing? I couldn't even keep it up. It's like you just fall over the whole time. But how did that happen? The love for rowing and all 4 boys.
Yeah, so that's actually is quite interesting. And really, I think it came from their father, David, because when I met him at Wits, he was a big rower for Wits University, and he loved rowing. He was passionate about it. He tried to go, he went overseas a few times. And then when we got married, he actually left rowing for a bit until 1992, when he came back and South Africa had been reinstated back into the Olympic Games at that stage. And he came to me one day and said, no, I want to row again, and I want to go to the Atlanta Olympic Games. And we already had 2 children at that stage. And he was working as a doctor. I was working. He was actually specializing. How he did it, I don't know. But he then pursued that course for 4 years. He trained, and the boys were small. So they sort of witnessed that. And that was ingrained in them, I think, in some way. And sadly, he never actually made it. He wasn't selected for the games, and he then stopped rowing. But secretly, those little boys, because they were around 6 and 3, and then I had James in that time, then they carried that little seed in them. And then eventually Matthew told us when he was in grade 7 or grade 6 that he wanted to row. And then slowly each one of them said the same thing. And I think people think we must have put pressure on them to row, but we didn't. In fact, I thought my last son, Charles, would not row, because he actually hated rowing. He hated coming to regattas with us. He dragged him along, and he thought this was not for him. And yet in grade 7, towards the end, he said, no, I'm going to row. I said, are you sure? I thought you didn't want to row. No, I want to row. And they all then carried that on and loved it. And from the moment they started rowing, it was one of those things that you never had to say to them, okay, it's time for training. Have you done your training? Have you done this? Never once did I have to say that. So that came from them, and the pressure to excel in it came from them. But yeah, I mean, having 4 boys and working, I was very clear that I wanted to work all the time, because I wanted them to see me as a working mother. I didn't want them to. I felt that was important, that they would actually see that you could work and look after them. Very important that I was there to look after them, but I also wanted a job. So I took part-time jobs for a long time. And I suppose in that way I compromised. Maybe I would have done something different had I not done that. May have specialized earlier, or you just make choices when you're faced with what you have. And I certainly don't regret that choice to take a bit of a back seat in some of the work, but be there for them when they were growing up.
Danielle, it's good morning from Elsa as well. And when looking at this sport, or this specific sport, it really seems challenging and hard. So I would like to refer, I'm just curious, I would like to refer to the level of fitness. How fit do you have to be to become a professional rower?
Extremely fit. Extremely fit. It's actually one of the toughest sports because you're racing. When you race, first of all, the training is incredibly hard because you have to build an incredible endurance capacity as well as being able to sprint, really. So it's both. And so you're working on an anaerobic and an aerobic base, and you need to build those. You need to be able to deliver that. And when you race, you're racing a 2,000 meter race at pretty much at max, right the way down. And I don't know if you ever go in the gym and get on one of those rowing machines and try to do 2 kilometers as hard as you can, and you will see how incredibly difficult it is. So the training is intense, and the harder they train, the better, really. So the training is long. They train at least 2 to 3 times a day, and I'm talking at a higher level. But even at school, the training is intense, and they often train twice a day. From sort of around about grade 8 or 9, they start to ramp up the training a bit. They need to do gym. They need to be strong. They run. There's a fair amount of cross-training in it as well. But the majority of the work is done in the boat and on the ergo machine. And the other thing about the sport is there's a huge technical element. So to get that stroke perfectly correct, especially when you're rowing with someone else and you're in sync with them, is very difficult and takes years of practice. And even the ones who are really good, they're still coached all the time about their stroke, correcting the stroke and getting the perfect stroke. And you don't always get many of those. So it is an amazing sport. I think it takes a lot of fitness, conditioning, strength, mental toughness. And then you've got this technical ability that you need to be able to feel how the boat is moving through the water and how you can put that blade in and pull as hard as you can to get it through so that you can do that again 1,000 times.
Danielle, we're going to just stay where you are. After the 7 o'clock news, I want to talk about the book Warriors and also how you as a family fought cancer and all that challenges. So I'm very curious about the story. So just stay tuned. Ons gesels met Danielle Brittain, dokter, en sy is die spandokter van ons roeispan, wat ook al ons 4 seuns, 2 van haar 4 seuns het al Olimpiese medaljes gewen. Ongelooflik, as jy die eerste deel gemis het, kan jy ook op ons YouTube kanaal gaan kyk. En dit is nou Matt Brittain, die was deel van die Awesome Foursome in die London Olympics in 2012. Medalje gewen, en toe Lawrence, die ander boetie, het toe in Rio silwer gewen, en dit is na sy geveg met kanker. So welcome back, Danielle.
Hi there.
I just want to, we talk about the book. I haven't read the book, and I can't wait to read it. But just as a family, you know, the fight with cancer, you know, just that story, and was it a big surprise, the difficulties? And I saw another interview with Lawrence. He's such a inspirational guy. Love the beard he's got now. So just give us a little bit of background about, yeah, it's such a bad challenge.
Yeah, I mean, Lawrence, you know, when I started working with the team, there was always something about him that I worried about. He just seemed to get sick a lot. Some of his blood tests were just were normal, but I would like them to have been better. Anyway, I mean, the years went by and he was doing fine. It was really in 2014 that his performance started to really go down, and he got dropped out of the pair, and the pair was the top boat at that stage, and he got dropped from that, and that was devastating for him. And we looked for problems, you know, I'd looked if there was something wrong with him, and we'd done tests and nothing ever showed up. And eventually, when he got dropped, he then made another boat, and they were good, and they were supposed to medal, and then they didn't medal. They came 5th, which also sounds pretty good. But if you want a medal and then you come fifth, it's very disappointing. And you know, I sort of wondered why they only come fifth. And then he rode another race, the university boat race, and he told me that was the hardest race he'd ever raced in his life. And then after that, I did more tests on him, and then I started to really worry because they were starting to be abnormal, and discussed with his dad, and you know, there was a whole lot of discussion there because his father's actually a hematologist. So we eventually decided, let's get this investigated, and that's when they discovered that he actually had advanced Hodgkin lymphoma, which was a terrible shock. I never thought, you know, I was worried there was something going on, but that wasn't quite what I had in mind. So that was a big shock, as well as the fact that it had pretty much spread through his body. And how he'd managed to keep going like this still causes me pain, and actually makes me realize what an incredible person he is, that he could still push out what he was pushing out when he was actually quite ill. And of course, then he stopped rowing, and we embarked on a heavy chemo program, which David's practice ran. He was working, Dr. Jackie Thompson was looking after him. And yeah, you know, they just said, we're going to cure him. You know, this cancer is responsive to chemo, and we're going to cure him. So even though he was stage 4, and when you hear stage 4 disease, you always think that you're not going to survive that, especially with my background in palliation, where that's all I saw was stage 4 patients who are now no longer able to be cured. Then it was very difficult. But he attacked it just like he would a race, and he gave it everything he could, and he came through that. And then slowly, and actually it was after the chemo that he then became very frustrated, and he started to really chomp at the bit there because he wanted to train now, and we were holding him back because we didn't know how hard we could push him. Some of the chemo drugs damaged the lungs and the heart, so we had to be careful. Anyway, and then he just carried on. You know, we slowly brought him back, and the rest, well, it is quite a good story. It was what prompted me to write the book, actually, was that he'd managed to overcome that and then perform at a level that most people are not able to perform at, to race like that. So that prompted the book. That was already in my mind, that this was a good story. And then somebody at the Rio Olympic Games actually told me that the brothers are the only 2 brothers in South Africa to have won medals. So I thought, oh, well, that's even more of a story then.
History.
And then I started to write about those 2. And then, of course, you know, you can't then keep out the background and where they came from. So the story is very much about them, but it's also about our family, really, and how they grew up. So yeah, that was my story at that stage.
I'm so sorry, Danielle, I would like to refer to Tokio again. I mean, in hindsight and when reflecting, is there another approach, or was there anything else that our team could have done, you know, to change the outcome of affairs?
Look, it's difficult. I don't really want to go into that a lot now because we haven't, as a team, had our own debriefing, which we're going to have at the end of this month, where certain things can be looked at. So I just think at that stage there were a few things that went wrong, perhaps without us really knowing. And I don't think it was a lot of things because the team was training well. We were 2 weeks in a training camp in Toyama in Japan, and things were going well. So somewhere in that period to the previous camp in Lesotho, there were a couple of things that perhaps didn't line up for the team. And unfortunately, when they came to race, it didn't line up and they couldn't race. So that has to be looked at. We have to see what actually happened. And this, I don't really want to discuss that now without having discussed that with the coach and the athletes themselves, who've had minor discussions, but not a proper debriefing.
I fully understand.
Totally. And it doesn't, affect the fact that you are a legendary family. They're fantastic athletes. I think you're a fantastic mom. Can't wait to read the book and see what's next for this family. So thank you for your time. You can be proud, and we as South Africans are so proud of the whole family. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. So maak seker jy kry daai boek. Die boek se naam is Warriors. Ek het hom self nog nie gelees nie, maar is baie nuuskierig om dit te lees en dis regtig 'n fenominale familie. Hy man is so inspirerend dat as jy nou so ander onderhoude gaan kyk ook na wat hy deur is. Kom ons gaan groei.